Hey there, fellow behavior professional. And if that's not you, feel free to skip the next 90 seconds. I'll wait. Okay, now that it's just us, let me guess. You're here because you know that using an enrichment framework to solve behavior cases will help your client's pet's behavior, but you're still working on how to implement it to get the most out of this strategy. Or you've tried incorporating enrichment into your client's behavior modification plans already, but your clients were resistant. Sound familiar? Yeah, Emily and I hear about these types of scenarios a lot. It's time to use enrichment to its fullest potential, and our upcoming free webinar, 3 Strategies to Uplevel Your Consulting Skills to Solve Behavior Challenges, Happier Pets, Enthusiastic Clients, and a more rewarding career using the Pet Harmony Enrichment Framework is here to help. Register today at petharmonytraining.com/enrichment webinar. Our 3 Strategies to Uplevel Your Consulting Skills to Solve Behavior Challenges webinar dives into the major mindset shift all consultants need to make first to use enrichment as effectively as possible, the confidence-boosting strategy that will keep you calm, cool, and collected while you troubleshoot, and our number 1 tip to keep clients happy, working with you, and ultimately referring to you. Register today at petharmonytraining.com/enrichment webinar. I'll see you there.
We try to be behavior focused in our enrichment, so we're not just giving them things for the sake of giving them things. So for bears, scent is really important, so we use a lot of scent based enrichment, so dilute sprays of like essential oils or coffee to investigate. One of their favorite things is shrimp paste. Ugh, it's so stinky. But if we smear it around, they'll lick it, they'll rub in it, they just love it. So shrimp paste, dried shrimp, and fermented tofu are huge hits. And I'm pretty sure they would be hits for dogs too, if you could bear the smell and you felt like bathing your dog afterwards.
Welcome to Enrichment for the Real World, the podcast devoted to improving the quality of life of pets and their people through enrichment. We are your hosts, Allie Bender.
And I'm Emily Strong.
And we are here to challenge and expand your view of what enrichment is, what enrichment can be, and what enrichment can do for you and the animals in your lives. Let's get started. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Enrichment for the Real World. And I want to thank you for rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts.
The voice you heard at the beginning of today's episode is Sarah van Herpt. Sarah has a BSc Biology and Ecology, MSc Conservation Biology, and Certificate in Veterinary Nursing. She is the director of the Veterinary and Behavioral Husbandry Services Department for Animals Asia in Vietnam and has extensive experience in animal behavior and rehabilitation. In particular, she is focused on cooperative care training in order to give animals choice and control over what happens to them and the rehabilitation of animals from either medical or psychological trauma. It is incredible to me how much depth of knowledge and experience Sarah has and how she just uses her many skills to just quietly change the lives of so many animals. In today's episode, you're going to hear Sarah and I talk about Animals Asia and all the cool things it does. You've heard of sun bears, but have you heard of moon bears? What American culture can stand to learn from Vietnamese culture? A day in the life of a bear, and browse. It's not just for humans. Content warning, there is a significant amount of discussion about biofarming in this episode. Okay, tell us your name, pronouns, and pets.
My name is Sarah van Herpt, she, her. And I have 2 gorgeous dogs, rescue dogs from Vietnam called Anne, which means peace, and Beto, which means pumpkin.
That is so cute. Peace and pumpkin. I love that. All right, well, so tell us your story and how you got to where you are.
So I've always loved animals, like right from day one. My parents have always had birds and cats. Now they've moved into dogs as well. And I remember as a kid, we had one masked lovebird and we trialed him with a peach-faced lovebird. And we brought this peach-faced lovebird home and introduced them, and I was sitting there in the kitchen watching them, observing them, recording down how many times they pecked each other or how many times they moved towards each other or away from each other, like doing my own little behavioural observations. So I think I was destined to be in the behaviour world. I did a Master's of Science and Conservation Biology through Massey University in Wellington, and I was actually thinking of getting more into sort of fieldwork based jobs, conservation jobs in New Zealand, but there's not a lot of those around, and they're really, really hard to get. As I worked as a zookeeper, I did, in the middle of that, I think it was about 2.5 years of zoo vet nursing, and then by the time I got to the end of my 7.5 years, I was a little bit reached the end of what I thought I could learn at that facility, and so I started looking for a bit of an adventure because I didn't have kids or a house or a partner or sort of anything, so I thought, right, adventure time it is. And I applied for Animals Asia, where I've been for over 8 years now, and I love every second of it. So I started as a bear team manager, so managing the team who were looking after the bears each day and making bigger picture decisions on nutrition and who meets who and when and that sort of thing. And then I became the senior bear team manager, and then last year I became the director of a new department within Animals Asia Vietnam called the Veterinary and Behavioural Husbandry Services Department, which is a very long title, but basically all it means is that instead of all of our expatriate technical expertise being based at one location, now we're based across Vietnam, sharing our knowledge with all of our programs and all of our partners. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That is amazing. And I love, one of the things that you and I have in common is being a lifelong learner and just pursuing the things that we really love and ending up in these really cool jobs that I, like, as a child, I never would have foreseen this for myself. But now I'm like, well, obviously this is what I ended up doing, right? And it sounds like you're in a similar situation.
I feel so lucky. I am passionate and I try really hard and I work my best, but honestly I do think I've been just so lucky. Who sets out to do field work and accidentally ends up a zookeeper? Like, that's such a competitive industry in New Zealand as well as a lot of other places. And then when I was looking for jobs after that, Animals Asia was the first one I applied for. First one I interviewed for and got it straight away. And like, I don't know, maybe I've got some good karma or something.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So tell me more about Animals Asia, the work that organization does, and what you do for that organization.
So Animals Asia is an NGO that primarily operates in China and Vietnam. I'm just going to talk about Vietnam today because that's my sort of area of expertise. China is a different kind of situation. So we have 3 main projects that we work on. So our flagship project, which most people know us for, is ending bear bile farming. And our other 2 programs are cat and dog welfare and trying to end the meat trade, cat and dog meat trade, and then also trying to end the use of wildlife, like entertainment performances and that sort of thing. And so or improve captive animal welfare. So we have an ethical elephant tourism program where we've rescued elephants from elephant riding, and now they are loose, free in the forest, and people can come and just watch them be elephants, and it's really cool. But ending bear bile farming is like our biggest project, and we're seeing really a lot of success. So we're the government's official partner on this project. We have an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, or basically an agreement with them that we will provide the space and the care for all of the bears if they end bear bile farming and basically get the bears to us. So it's very cool. We're on track to do that by the end of 2026, not barring another COVID or something happening. We've built our second sanctuary now. Our initial Vietnam sanctuary is about an hour north of Hanoi, which is in northern Vietnam, and our second sanctuary is in Bac Ma, which is between Hue and Da Nang, which is central Vietnam. So we're a bit spread out. We've rescued 282 bears in Vietnam so far. We've got a little less than 200 still alive. We've got 8 at our Backmar sanctuary because it's just new, and I think we're at 186 at our Tamdao sanctuary. We rescue Asiatic black bears or moon bears and Malayan sun bears. So we have only 13 sun bears and everything else is a moon bear. So a little bit skewed there, but I like to say that our sun bears cause just as much damage as our moon bears. Little bundles of energy. Yeah, so that's a little bit about Animals Asia, and I talked before a little bit about my department. So historically, all of the expats in country just worked at our Tamdao sanctuary, and then we had one working at the Elephant Project, and that's where all our expertise was. And something really important to Animals Asia is not just working for the animals, but working for the people as well. And so we aimed and have really focused in the last 6 or 7 years in getting our sanctuaries to be Vietnamese run and led. So we did that with Backmar. It was set up that way, and we're slowly transitioning each program to be Vietnamese run and led. So the next one will be our Tao sanctuary. Once our veterinary interns graduate in October, then that will be fully Vietnamese run and led, and then the elephant sort of advisor will be the last one to phase out. And so what that means for us is that we've trained ourselves out of that specific job, but what we've done is we've really moved our focus so we still work across all of those projects in the sanctuaries and stuff. There is some sort of higher level technical skills that we have that are a little bit more time consuming to pass on, so there's still things that we help to oversee and manage or troubleshoot for them. But now we work across a lot of government rescue centres with more species, a lot of macaques, and just trying to share our knowledge even wider.
I love everything that y'all are doing, and there are so many things I want to ask you more about. First of all, I'm intrigued by your comment that the sun bears make as much mess as the moon bears. So tell me more about the different species typical behaviors between the two, and why are the sun bears more active, for lack of a better word? What's going on there? What's their deal?
So it's been really interesting. So my previous bear experience before I moved to Vietnam was not very much, but it was with sun bears, and I feel like they're a very emotional species. They live on the very sort of edge of their skin, very, I would call them maybe high strung, but in generally they're super active. Their sort of foraging technique is very destructive. They like to get into logs to get bugs and hides and all that sort of stuff. They like to climb, and they're just a lot more active than the moon bears. The moon bears, they have the same foraging techniques. They'll tear apart logs and stuff, but they're just so laid back. They're just chill. They have a forage, have a play, make a nest, lie down. Whereas the sun bears do the same things, but at about double speed. They're world's smallest bear, but world's biggest bear personality, I'm sure of it. Yeah. So I don't know how much your listeners know about bear species, but yeah. So sun bears are the smallest bear species. They're named for the crescent on their chest, which is a yellow big circle depending on the bear. They have extremely long claws, and they tend to be a little bit more arboreal. I guess they can because they're so small. They have the longest tongue in relation to their body size of all the bear species, and that's, I think, a part of that is because they're getting into the honey and getting into the hives and getting into the nooks and crannies to get all the bugs and things like that. They have short fur and small ears, whereas the moon bears are much bigger. So sun bears may be 50 to 60 kgs is good. The moon bears for a female maybe 120 to 140 is good. Male 160 to 180 kgs. And they have longer fur. The females especially have these big beautiful ruffs around their neck. They have bigger ears. They also have a crescent on their chest, but it's a pale yellow, almost whitish, and it's just like a half crescent, which is why it's called a moon bear. They are more arboreal when they're younger than when they're older. And for us, some of the differences as well relate to the conditions that we get them in. So for the sun bears, they don't tend to be kept as biofarm bears, whereas the moon bears do. So a little bit about biofarming is the bile from the bear's gallbladder is used in traditional medicine, and it actually has a chemical in it, UDCA, which is helpful in treating liver disease. However, there are synthetic alternatives available, as well as herbal alternatives that have the same thing, that do the same thing. So there's no need for taking bile from the bears. They're kept in really horrible conditions, dark rooms in a cage, no solid ground, not fed every day, not given water every day. When they anaesthetize them to take the bile, they rope them down, and it's very cruel. And so when they come to us, generally our sun bears are in a much better condition than the moon bears. They still have the same things. The sun bears are still kept in those same sort of conditions. They're just not extracted from so much. And so we see a lot of issues with the bears' cancers, so a lot of liver cancer. We have to remove their gallbladder sometimes because it's just too diseased. A lot of dental issues, a lot of hypertension, which we don't know why, but we assume it's from stress, prolonged stress, and a lot of mobility issues, a lot of arthritis and joint issues. So lots of different things that they're coming to us with, and it's really interesting training sun bears versus moon bears, because the sun bears are exceptionally smart and they get it really quickly, and the difficulty of training them is not whether they understand it, it's whether they want to do it, don't want to do it. So you're very much dependent on their mood. Whereas the moon bears are a little bit more relaxed, like, oh yeah, cool, let's train, yeah, let's do this. Oh, I'm a bit hungry, so I'll be a bit faster today. And some of them it takes quite a while. We've got one gorgeous male called Jarvis, and he's such a sweetheart. He's got so many friends in his group. He loves everyone, but he is not the sharpest tool in the shed, and it takes a very long time for him to understand things.
That's hilarious, and it reminds me of working with parrots, because most parrot species, I tell my students who've only ever trained dogs, if you should train some parrots, because you need to learn what it's like when your learner is faster than you are, and they have like no latency. And then there's male Otis parrots, and I don't know why, but they are so contemplative, and it takes them so long. Like their latency between when they're cued and when they do the behavior can be so much longer on average. Of course, there are outlier birds, and of course, sometimes even the most contemplative guy will be really eager to do a particular thing in a particular context. But for the most part, they are so slow. Like you ask them to do something and they'll be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let me think about that. Okay, I can do that. Yeah. And yeah. So with the sun bears and the moon bears, do they have different diets? Do they forage in different ways, or is it pretty much the same, but the moon bears are just more chilled out about it? Like what's the difference there?
Yeah, they basically do have the same diet. We do offer the sun bears slightly more fruit and protein than the moon bears. They're both omnivorous, lots of fruits, berries, leaves, vegetation, insects. Sun bears are definitely a lot more interested in getting the insects. We set up their enclosures in the same way, lots of hiding the food, moving it around different locations. The sun bears we give a slightly different enrichment calendar to. That's just a little bit more items, more complexity, because they seem to need that difficulty in their lives. But I love, one of my favourite behavioural concepts is contra freeloading. And so for anyone who's not sure what that is, it's basically the idea that most species that they studied prefer to work for their food rather than just be given it. So I have definitely seen our bears, there's a tomato on the ground, or there's a tomato in this puzzle feeder and they're going for the puzzle feeder, and it's really cool. So we try to incorporate that a lot into how we set up their food and enrichment.
Yeah, I love that. There's a science writer in the dog training world named Eileen Anderson. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her work. She just wrote a blog about She just wrote a blog about contra freeloading, and she was talking about kind of the more nuanced understanding of it. And one of the things that she said is that it appears that information gathering is part of the motivation behind contra freeloading. Like if you know that a food source is always going to be here, but there's this new one that might have a food source, it makes sense to go check that out and investigate that for the future, right? And I love how much we see that in wild, not domesticated, but wild species that are in captivity. They're like, wait, you can get food over there too? That was a huge aha moment for me. That's like, oh yeah, they're information gathering. That makes so much sense. I love that. So you mentioned that you also work with like elephants and macaques. Is that at the location that you're working at, or is that somewhere else? Like, where are these animals?
So they're spread across Vietnam. So our elephant project is in Yon National Park, which is south central area. We work with a rescue centre in Sapa, which is northern Vietnam, one on the outskirts of Hanoi, one in Phong Nha, Quebec, which is central Vietnam. And then the elephant project that we work on, there's our elephants in the national park, but we also work with the Elephant Conservation Centre, which has 3 captive male elephants who can't be released into the park. And they are setting up a new rescue centre, a multi-species one. So we've actually been helping them to design that facility and upskilling their staff to set them up on the right foot moving forward. A lot of the rescue centres that we work with, I said macaques, definitely a big one. Also gibbons, snakes, which are definitely not my strong point and I'm a bit scared of coming from New Zealand because we don't have snakes in New Zealand, so this is new and not so fun. A lot of small carnivores, leopard cats, civets, binturong, a lot of reptiles, iguanas, different turtle and tortoise species. So it's very mixed, and they're all in various different conditions. Some of them have been kept as pets and been confiscated. Some of them have been trapped in the forest and snared and need some injuries fixed before being released. Some of the animals in those rescue centres are releasable, some of them are not. Gosh, one of our rescue centres even has wallabies now. Someone got caught smuggling wallabies, and so one of the rescue centres ended up with 4 wallabies, just randomly, which isn't a species you see a lot in Vietnam. So yeah, it's a big mixture, and the staff there, some of them are really passionate about what they do and some of them are not, and that's something that can be quite challenging. I know for us in our nice Western countries, with all of our resources and opportunities, we think that animal care is like the best thing ever and it's so great and everyone wants to do it. Whereas in Vietnam, we're still teaching about animal welfare basics, and animal care isn't a well-respected job at all. Animals are dirty and they're for our use, they don't have their own inherent sort of value as individuals. So yeah, we have a real mixture of people that we get to work with, and one of the things that we need to do is sort of find their motivation and find their sweet spot to be able to help them to help the animal. So as I said, we've got some people who are just so passionate and just absolutely love these animals and really want to do the best for them. Some people are just turning up to get paid, and that is absolutely fine. And for those people, maybe our approach is different. It's here's how to do this in an easier way, or here's how to do this more efficiently, or we're targeting sort of different areas of their interest.
Yeah, I would actually love to talk more about that because I interview people from all over the world. And I think one thing that I'm interested in cultivating is an awareness that the United States is not the end all be all of animal welfare. Like, we have a very geocentric approach to animal welfare. Like, we've got it all figured out. We're the best. And we're just here to educate the rest of the world. And that is super not true. But on the other hand, there are countries and cultures who have really damaging practices. And that's just objectively true. And still, there's how we approach it here in the States leaves much room for improvement. I'll put it that way, right? In terms of like shaming the cultures, having this kind of white savior approach, thinking that we can rescue animals from situations, ship them across the country to the United States, and assuming that their lives are better just because they're here. When my experience with those animals that's objectively false. Like, their lives do not get better here because they have no idea how to exist here, right? And so it's just really complicated and it's really messy, and nothing is, I think, as straightforward as a lot of people think it is or want it to be. So I would love to hear your perspective on how you take a culturally sensitive and respectful approach to sharing information and resources with people while still maintaining levels of like standards, animal welfare standards, but not running roughshod over the culture, right? So I would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, for sure. That's something I actually find really hard sometimes, where, especially around our rescue stories, when we put rescue content out, there's sometimes a lot of like vitriol directed towards the farmer, and I find that really frustrating because for Animals Asia, our tagline is kindness in action, right? And that is what I love about Animals Asia so much, is that they're trying to work with people, right? They're trying to be really understanding. And the thing is that a lot of these people still doing these practices, they don't understand. They don't have that access to that education and opportunities to learn about the sort of stuff that we do. And they're just trying to keep their families provided for. And like, especially recently, so it's not actually illegal to have a bear in Vietnam. It's okay if you're not allowed a bear. So, sorry. In 2005, the government went around and microchipped all of the bears that were kept as private pets, or whatever we're calling it. And so you're still allowed to have a bear as long as it was microchipped in 2005 or microchipped in general. And so that was supposed to stop bears being brought onto farms, because if they didn't have a microchip, they were illegal and could be confiscated. So it's not actually illegal right now to have a pet bear. And some people, especially lately, have been voluntarily giving us their pet bears. And these are true pets. They haven't been extracted from. And the people who are giving up their bears have learned. They've learned through their children, or through different materials and things available to them. And so we had 2 bears recently. So one, her name is QQ, and that is the name that her owner gave her. And he came out to our sanctuary before deciding to give QQ up. And he came to see what her life would be, where would she be living, like what are the conditions like, what is the routine like. And his biggest concern was, you've got a lot of bears, are you sure you're going to have enough food for QQ? And when we reassured him, he very kindly relinquished her to us. And he is welcome to come and visit anytime, of course, any of our ex-owners are. He very much loves QQ. And then the same for another bear recently, so her name is Crescent, and she was brought to us by her owners. Her owners actually came with her and were very upset and crying, and they loved her so much, but they realized that now is the time and they want to give her a better life. And yeah, so that's how we try to work with all of our communities. So we're not going into Vietnam telling you biofarming is bad, you're all terrible people. We're saying we understand why you use the bio, We understand that it's part of your traditional values. Here's some alternatives. We've worked with the traditional medicine community, and now they don't prescribe beer balm. We've helped them to make other herbal alternatives and things so that they're still using traditional medicine, but it's just not animal-based traditional medicine. We work with schools. We're trying to really educate the next generation of Vietnamese people, and so we create herbal gardens in the schools that they get to look after, and we do education with them, and then we focus that a lot around a place called Phuc Tuong, which is basically the beer bale farming hotspot in Vietnam, just out of Hanoi. And so then those kids go home and they say, hey, grandma, granddad, like, we learned about this today, like, why are we doing this with our beer? And they're not bad people, they're not inherently bad people. Of course there is always some who are just in it for the gain, of course, but for the majority of people, they're not setting out to do harm or anything like that. And it's the same with like our elephant project and the sort of owners down there. One of the things we recognise is that in Dak Lak province, where our elephant project is, elephants are extremely culturally important, and access to elephants is extremely culturally important to them. So that's something we factor into everything we do, making sure that people can come and see the elephants. There's no like hiding them away in the forest and no one can come and see them and things like that. So every country has its cruelty. Every country has its poor welfare. If I'm looking at America, I'm looking at roadside zoos and the conditions that a lot of those animals are kept in. Like, you can come and yell at my wonderful Vietnamese people about how bad they are with beer bile, but you guys are drugging and petting tiger cubs and bear cubs and keeping them in concrete pens in roadside zoos. There's something everywhere, and yelling at people and being mean to them is not going to change hearts and minds. It's just not.
I'm happy to continue picking on the United States because I live here, so I can say it. We are ground zero for industrial farming and industrial agriculture. We have this weird belief that animals shouldn't live on streets, like that we shouldn't have streeties. And so we put them all in a bunch of buildings and expect the poor people who work in those to be able to meet the needs of the animal at the level that those animals could meet their own needs if they were just allowed to be streeties. So like, hot take, animal shelters shouldn't exist. The only reason they exist is because Americans don't like dogs and cats on our streets. And I'm not saying that we should attack the shelters. Like, we should support the shelters, because if our culture requires sheltering, we should do everything we can to support the people who are doing that work. But their jobs shouldn't exist. And it's just entirely because of our cultural beliefs about where animals are allowed to be and where they're not allowed to be. So we definitely have a lot of messes to clean up in our own country. And the whole thing about glass houses and throwing stones and all of that, we don't need to be telling other people how to do things. And I work with a lot of people around the world who do extraordinary work and do things that just doesn't exist here. So I want to ask you, is there anything in Vietnam that you've seen in terms of like the freedoms that animals are afforded, or the ways that animals and humans coexist, that delighted you?
Well, there's not any sort of welfare friendly amazing thing that I've seen. What I have seen and what I'm really enjoying is the changing attitudes of people in Vietnam. So dogs traditionally being guard dogs or meat, now moving a lot more towards pets and our friends, and seeing all of the daycares and dog parks and pet shops and vet clinics and everything like that popping up is amazing. And like, just the attitudes changing. So where our sanctuary is and where we live is quite rural, and one of our vet nurses has started basically like puppy preschool, and it's not really for puppies, some of them are puppies, but some of them are adult dogs as well. And she's teaching our team, she's teaching our colleagues about dog behavior and socialization and different things, and the people, they're getting really engaged. So I think what really impresses me about Vietnam is the willingness to learn and change their mindset. I think that's really amazing, and I don't think that every country or every people has that same mindset of willingness to change and growth and learn.
Yeah, a culture of growth mindset is really special. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to shift topics a little. Can you walk me through a day in the life of the bears in the sanctuary? What do their enrichment plans look like, and what is their day to day?
Yeah, so our bears are kept inside overnight in their dens, and that is for safety. Our sanctuary is essentially built on like reclaimed forest land. So it was forested historically, and then it was farmed, and then they replanted it, but the land is not amazing. And so with the replanting, a lot of the species of trees are not native or very well suited to that climate. So when we have random storms and things coming through, it's not unheard of for trees to come through fences. So we keep our bears inside overnight. So what happens in the morning is we always have a morning meeting all together just to make sure everyone's on track and we've got our plans sorted for the day. And then the team go out and they set up everything in the enclosure for the bears, so all their enrichment and their food. So our bears get 2 enrichment sessions per day from an enrichment calendar. So our enrichment calendars are month long and seasonal. So calendar lasts a month and is repeated 3 times, and then it's the next season's calendar. So it's quite a lot of change and variation throughout the year, and our seasonal calendars are really based on what's important for the bears in that season. So in winter, it's a lot of bedding and sleeping opportunities, whereas in spring, there is a lot of more greens and vegetation and browse focused, and then in summer, obviously lots of ice blocks and cooling things, and then autumn, they go through a period of something called hyperphagia, which is where they eat to excess, getting ready for dormancy in the winter. And so in autumn, we have a lot more food focused and puzzle feeder focused enrichment. And so basically in the morning, the team set up their first feed, their first enrichment session, and a browse session in their enclosures. And then they go inside to the dens, they give them their medications, because more than half of our bears are on medications, and then let them outside to forage, and they observe them, and then they clean their dens, and then let them back in. And that's actually something I thought was really special coming from a zoo background, is the animals can have access to the indoors and the outdoors during the day, and they don't get shut out. That's great. And so then they enjoy their morning. Post foraging, they might play, they might have a nap, they might just cruise around, and then at 2 p.m. we recall them into the dens again, and we put out a second feed and a second enrichment session. Then let them back out, and then in the evening they're recalled into the dens for the night, where they get a third feed and a second browse session. And then so we do training sessions with the bears as well. So that's one of the things that I'm really proud of, a project that I've done. When I started, mainly the only trainers were the expat staff and maybe 1 or 2 Vietnamese people. There was maybe only about 5 or 6 of us. And so I taught the teams how to train. So our team leaders and our assistant team leaders all learned first, and then any bear carer who was interested could learn as well. And so now we've gone to 43 trainers. Yeah, and we have 143 bears who have learned different behaviours, and those behaviours range from really simple sort of foundational behaviours like wait and follow and focus, all the way up to things like blood draws, blood pressure readings, open mouth, nail trim, lots of different medical-based behaviours. So those training sessions, this is one of the hard things about housing so many bears, is that you can't just do a training session whenever you want. You have to do it when everyone else is distracted. So our training sessions happen as soon as the bears go out to eat. The bears who are being trained, they stay inside, and they also get their food, and then we do a training session with them. If I was to maybe go into the house at 11 a.m. to try and train a bear, and that house had 20 bears, I would have 1 bear being trained in a den and 19 bears surrounding them on the other sides. So it would be really not fair to the other bears who aren't earning reinforcement and having that opportunity, and really, really distracting for my trainer. So we're a little bit limited in how often we can train and how many bears we can train, but we make it work. We've had a lot of really good success. Other things that happen for the bears would be if they're having a health check. So process for that at the moment is to ask them to walk into a transport cage, and then we close them in, and then they are taken up to the hospital. So very much like a dog or a cat going to the vet potentially if you pop them in a crate. Same thing with a big bear. We have weighing quarterly, so we can track the seasonal trends of the bears. And so again, it's the same thing where they walk into a weigh cage, we weigh them, they walk back out again. Sometimes we have what we call integrations, which is basically when we introduce new bears to each other. So they meet each other in the dens because it's a nice controlled environment, but there's a whole big long process that I won't go into right now. A lot of steps and a lot of careful consideration and planning, because obviously bears are very large and have a lot of sharp pointy bits, but generally it is a very fun, very enjoyable process to do. And then also the other thing that tends to happen, not as often at the moment because our rescues are a little bit slower, is first time enclosure access. So bears, they go from our quarantine area into a den, and then once they're settled in the den, they either have an integration or enclosure access. And people seem to think that enclosure access is going to be the most exciting, best thing ever, unless you work at our sanctuary and you know that it is generally not very fun and a little bit stressful. And that's because the bears, they've been confined in such a small space for so long. The sky is new, the leaves are new, the grass is new, there's so much space. Why is everything so big? Yeah, it's actually quite stressful for the bears. The majority of them take a little while. Some of them are very confident and very keen and just go straight out, and it's amazing. But a lot of them will take a while, and we even had one little sun bear called Cubby Leo, and she took a year to get able to go outside. And she's amazing now, but it was a very, very stressful process for her, and she did not enjoy it.
That's amazing. And I love that y'all have the patience and the dedication to really meet their needs and kind of meet each bear where they're at and just go with them on the journey at whatever pace they need to take. I love to hear that. Can you define for our listeners what browse is and what it does for bears?
Oh, sorry, yes, jargon. So browse is basically branches and leaves. So we have a very lovely man who supplies us with our browse. It's usually things like mango, jackfruit. We use banana leaves, corn stalks. So basically it's got two main functions. So one is it's another food source. Some of them are more desired to eat than others. And it's enrichment. So they can use it as bedding. Some of them just like to really play with it and wave it around and swing it like a nunchuck or something. Yeah, so it's just another way of bringing the forest to them.
So I know for parrots, browse also helps to keep their beaks nice and worn down. And for rabbits, browse is really important for keeping their teeth worn down, and also like other like rodents as well. So is there something like that for bears? Is there some element of like body maintenance, or is it just like you were talking about, entertainment, food, bedding, stuff like that?
Not so much with browse, but nail wear is something that's really important, and we factor that into our enrichment. So making sure that we have options for ripping apart logs or digging or things like that in the enclosure. Unfortunately, because of sort of skeletal issues with some of the bears, they aren't able to wear down their nails appropriately. And so for those bears, we do use our cooperative care training to do nail trims. But generally, if we notice that a bear, a normal bear, shall we say, nails are getting too long, then for us that's an issue with our husbandry that we need to address, not so much a reason to train them. So we try and get that done as naturally as possible. But yeah, browse tends to be smaller smaller bits, so not like a huge branch, just so that we can fit it through the bars of the den in the evening, things like that. So in the enclosure we have big logs and log piles and things like that, but the browse that goes into the den and things is a lot slimmer.
So talk to me more about, because you said that you add enrichment, their food and browse. And then you said that sometimes the enrichment includes things like logs that they can tear apart. What are some of the other things that are included in like a bundle of enrichment that you provide for them?
So we try to be behavior focused in our enrichment, so we're not just giving them things for the sake of giving them things. So for bears, scent is really important, so we use a lot of scent based enrichment, so dilute sprays of like essential oils or coffee to investigate. One of their favorite things is shrimp paste. Ugh, it's so stinky. But if we smear it around, they'll lick it, they'll rub in it, they just love it. So shrimp paste, dried shrimp, and fermented tofu are huge hits. And I'm pretty sure they would be hits for dogs too, if you could bear the smell and felt like bathing your dog afterwards.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead. Now that makes me wonder, do they actually eat seafood like shrimp? Do they like, you know how like North American bears will like catch salmon and eat salmon? Do sun bears and moon bears catch anything in like lakes or rivers or streams of Vietnam?
I think opportunistically they would, but it's not their main food source. Especially sun bears would be a lot more invertebrate focused. It's more, I don't think they would actively go out and hunt like the North American bears do. I think for them it's more take an opportunity as it comes. Same with like hunting, because they will hunt or they will take down small mammals. They're not going out to do that every day. They're more sort of foraging.
So their love of shrimp paste is just because it's stinky, not because it's a food that they would be feeding themselves in the wild. That's fascinating. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. Carry on with your list of enrichment stuff that you provide for them.
Yeah, so other things behaviours that we try to encourage with our enrichment is nest building, which is obviously a big part of a bear's day. Once they've finished eating, they want to build a nice comfy nest to sleep in. So a lot of different things we offer. So we have substrate pits, and then we also offer different substrates around. So we have straw, leaf litter, rice husks, which is something very Vietnamese and very easy to get, bark, grass clippings. So we tend to clip some of the grass in the enclosure, not all of it, just for a few reasons. One is snakes, and the other is our mobility bears, and if the grass gets too long, and some of them are quite short because of stunted growth, they get like itchy eyes and things, so we do have to cut it a bit. So we might put grass clippings somewhere. We call them Hessian sacks. I'm not sure if that's the same like jute sacks or like old coffee bags.
Yeah, I've never heard the term Hessian before. Yeah, I think we probably call them jute.
Yeah, I think jute. Like we have some very unique Vietnamese type things like palm brooms and straw brooms that we can give them to play with and destroy and tear up. And then obviously a lot of cognitive based enrichment, puzzle feeders, and made out of bamboo or wood or browse, tires. Yeah, gosh, I could sit here for ages listing them all. We used to use kongs, but they're actually really hard to get in Vietnam and obviously very expensive, so it's not very cost effective. And then just lots of like different food presentations and food scatters and like novel food items. In our summer calendar, we have once per month what we call the special treat. And so it's something very, very special that they don't get very often. So one month it's fresh strawberries, which is very hard to get and a little bit expensive in Vietnam. So fresh strawberries. One month it's coconuts, which is very, very high value. And I have to tell you, we get a lot of failed recalls after Coconut Day. And the other one is dried mulberries, which is mulberries are something that the bears would naturally eat in the wild. They are, again, pricey, but we try to like introduce novelty in that sort of way as well. Sun bears occasionally now because they got a little bit fat, that's extra for the sun bears, but we manage the moon bears in a different, more cost-effective way.
I love that. Thank you for explaining all of that. So At the end of every episode, I like to ask people the same set of questions because I like to hear their answers. The first question is, what are our observable goals and actionable items that people can take away from this discussion?
I like this question. I think that when you are approaching animal welfare, to treat the people responsible for that animal's welfare with kindness and empathy and understanding. And also that many of the things you can do with your cats and dogs, you can do with bears too.
Like Kongs, for example, which could be shipped to Vietnam. The biggest ones. Yeah. The jumbo ones. What is one thing you wish people knew about this topic? Your profession or enrichment, your choice.
One thing I wish I saw more, and not just with cat and dog owners, but also with zoo world, is people having goal-based enrichment. So it's not just, hey, what enrichment items can I give my cat, dog, monkey? They're asking, I want to encourage my cat, dog, or monkey to dig a hole, to show scent marking behavior. What enrichment can I use to meet that goal?
I just need to tell you that I have devoted my entire career to that mission of getting people to be more goal-based in their enrichment plans. So I cannot agree with you enough.
I'm in a zookeeper Facebook group, and it is one of my pet peeves when I see people asking, what enrichment can I give? And I'm like, I always ask, what's your goal?
What do you want to get out of it?
Yeah.
What are you hoping to improve about that animal's welfare and well-being? And then you'll be able to reverse engineer your answer from there. Love that. Thank you. What is one thing you'd love to see improved in your field?
I think true collaboration and a decrease in ego. Not that I'm saying it's a big problem, but I do get this feeling I really like to ask for opinions and help, and sometimes I really feel like the responses that I get are not necessarily coming from a place of help or compassion. They're coming from well, I know all of these things and you should definitely do this. And that's just not what I'm aiming for. Like, I'm not silly. I'm very experienced. I work really hard. I try really hard to learn, but I also acknowledge that I don't know everything. And so I want to engage with people in our industry who are humble about their knowledge and are really coming at it from a sharing point of view, and then they want to really listen to what I have to say in terms of my problems and my approaches, and then add to it rather than tell me I'm wrong. I don't mind being wrong, for sure. I do not mind being wrong, but I want a bit more like empathetic collaboration.
Yeah, I think for me, the more dogmatic somebody is in their advice, the less I trust their advice. Because to me, when somebody has a real depth of knowledge and a growth mindset, which somebody can have one without the other, there is that intellectual humility of, right, this is what I know from my experience and through my lens from the academic discipline that I came from. And also it's not the only way to see things, and I may not know everything and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I'm right with you on that. What do you love about what you do?
Everything? Okay, no, I don't love paperwork. Two main things. One is, especially with the bear, because at the moment that's who I have the most experience with. But even in the zoo, I did a lot of rehabilitation of kia, which are a parrot species in New Zealand. I like seeing the animals succeed or change, or especially make a new friend. And so our Vietnamese bear team managers know that if they have a new friend pair of bears, they always will tell me, because they know how excited I get to hear like these little connections being made. And then it's really the same for the people I work with. I like seeing them succeed. I like seeing them excited, engaged, and I really believe that my success comes from theirs. So I like seeing them grow and learn and just be amazing.
That's beautiful, and I agree. I like to say I live for the light bulb moment. Yeah, because that's what it is. I love seeing that moment of discovery and joy that happens across species, human, non-human, everybody. Yeah. What are you currently working on? If people want to work more with you or learn from you, or perhaps donate to Animals Asia, where can they find you?
So the best port of call is our website, which is animalsasia.org. There is a lot of information on there about what we do, but there's also a lot of different options for donating, and there is information on open days. So if you're ever in Vietnam, we are a sanctuary, and our Tam Dao Sanctuary is the only GFAS, so Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, accredited sanctuary in Vietnam. And so to be a true sanctuary, that means that you have tours and you're not just open access like a zoo. So if you want to come and visit, go on the website. The visiting days are there as well. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was such a pleasure to hear about the incredible work you're doing and learn more about sun and moon bears and how you enrich their lives. I really appreciate you, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun, and I love podcasting and what you do.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if there's someone in your life who also needs to hear this, be sure to text it to them right now. If you're a pet parent looking for more tips on enrichment, behavior modification, and finding harmony with your pet, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Pet Harmony Training. If you're a behavior training professional dedicated to enrichment for yourself, your clients, and their pets, check us out on TikTok and Instagram at Pet Harmony Pro. As always, links to everything we discussed in this episode are in the show notes. Thank you to Ellen Yoakum for editing this episode and making us sound good. Our intro music is from Penguin Music on Pixabay. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps more pet lovers and professionals find us so they can bring enrichment into their world too. Thank you for listening, and here's to harmony.